that is where the blessing is now. That is where the favor resides. It's not here with your fleshly wants, hopes, desires, dreams, ambitions. It's back where you made the vow. It's back where you said, if I got you back there safely, you said you'd be mine. Genesis 31. Guys, I hope this story has been building and building for you like it has for me. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about this time in Genesis 32 where we see man wrestle with God. It is awesome. I love that chapter. But today is very important in the lead up to that. For context, we see Jacob has felt that pull to return back to the promised land, and he knows he's not supposed to stay in Haran, but he lets his uncle Laban come to him with an offer. Whatever he wants, name his wages. And Jacob picks getting the streaked and spotted sheep and goats from the flock, all that are born streaked and spotted. And he stays there for 6 more years. So we're at 20 years total. And he is gaining lots of flocks and getting wealthy. And here's where we pick up in Genesis 31, verse 1. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. So it took just 6 years for his father-in-law to regret asking Jacob to stay. Like, he has changed his mind over time. Laban doesn't say this directly. No. Jacob hears about it secondhand through Laban's sons. And then he realizes that, hey, Laban is being cold towards me. You ever find out that way, that someone has aught against you through someone else? Like every job I've ever worked at, ever, that just happens. It's like, hey, this person's talking smack about you. Like, what? I didn't know there was a problem. And you go to them and that person's like, no, we're fine. Like, we don't seem fine. The favor that Jacob once had with Laban is gone. And it is here that God speaks, knowing that Jacob is ready to receive. Remember, God didn't tell Jacob to go back to the promised land in Genesis 31. That was Jacob's idea. But Jacob let himself be talked into staying. His heart still wants what he wants. And so when given this opportunity, Jacob's like, yeah, I want that extra wealth. I want those wages. I feel like I'm owed these wages. But when he sees that the favor is gone, that's when God is like, now you're going to be open to this. So in verse 3, we read, then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. He's letting him know the people you thought that were with you here, Jacob, are not. They see your blessings and they don't rejoice in them. They spurn them. They are jealous of them. We don't know what would have happened if Jacob had stayed, but I don't think it would have been good. Laban's son's jealousy would have eventually led to Jacob's ruin. Jacob could have stayed and rolled the dice, but God just said the path to covenant is back in the promised land. That is the path to blessing, the path to peace. And Jacob understands now that there is peace here in Haran no more. But we also know from context that that path back to peace is leading him back to a brother, Esau, that said, next time I see you, I will kill you. So except for the brother that wants to kill me part, I really relate to this part of the story in my own life. In July 2009, God very clearly told me to leave Tulsa and come back to Iowa. And I did not understand at that particular time why that was God's timing, because I looked around and I found myself surrounded with blessing. I was in full-time ministry. I was in a large church that was seeing a lot of success. I was writing plays. I was performing them for the church. I was doing Christian media. I was involved in missions field work. I was having such a great time. I felt like I was right at the place that I was supposed to be. And also, I was working at one of the greatest companies that have ever existed, Blockbuster Video. But right in the middle of that, God said, go. And he said it at church camp. One of our best church camps we'd had ever. Tracy and I were also church camp directors, and we had started this from the ground up, and we were just like, this is amazing. And in the middle of this culmination every year of what we're about in our hearts and just giving all this time to God and hard work and all this stuff, God said, pack up and move. And my head didn't understand. But here's a cool thing that happened. My head was like, it doesn't make any sense to me, but my heart instantly left. Like, I had this understanding that it's like, whatever I put my hand to now, here in Tulsa, I'm not going to be about anymore. I'm not going to put into it. The love for it will be gone. I told my wife as soon as I could what God laid on my heart, and it was like none of the other ministry, the success, even Blockbuster, none of that other stuff mattered now. I say Blockbuster like that, kind of sarcastically, but seriously too. I would miss the people greatly, but not the success. Does that make sense? Like the how great everything was going. I was glad it was going great, and I knew it would continue to go great for those people, but I wasn't to be a part of it anymore. I was to move on from it. Here's the thing, though. We did not leave right away. We stayed an entire year. We did this practically because, well, first off, it took 3 months for God to bring my wife around into one accord. I did not harass or harangue her about this. I went to her, I was like, here's what God wants. And she was just like, no. Actually, she said something else, but she was just like, no, very strongly, no. And so I was like, God, if it's your will, you're gonna be the one to bring her around. And in 3 months, he did. And then we were like, okay, we got to get our house on the market. During that time, that is when the housing market crashed. And just a perfect time to sell a house during a housing crisis. And we had to prep for the church to replace me. And staying that year, though, I noticed pretty quickly, even before God convinced my wife, before we decided we were leaving, that, and this before we told anyone, the peace left. I still had the fruit of the blessing. I still had the job. I still had the success. I still had, our finances, our needs were being met. I was still in that successful place, but the favor was gone because I knew at that time I was no longer where I was supposed to be. Don't misunderstand me. You can be surrounded by terrible circumstances, but still have all of the favor. This happened to Paul repeatedly. The godly favor he had led him into a town where he would get dragged out of and stoned to death, but the believers prayed and he got back up and he went back into that town to keep preaching. Paul would get arrested and the jailer and his whole family would end up getting saved. Paul would get arrested again, and people would want to kill him, and he'd get smuggled away. Paul would be on a ship at sea that is going to capsize, and Acts 27:42 says, the soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping, but the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. Understand that the favor I'm talking about here is being in the will of God. And that trust that you have that is like, okay, God, you put me here. I know you're going to see me through until the day you call me home. That favor can help keep you in that place you're supposed to be, or it can help you move along to the next place. It was very clear in our surroundings that both from the people around us and from our livelihoods, it was like, you're supposed to be moving. God was setting up a period. He called me first. He made it clear. And then he's like, and now I'm going to help shuttle you along. I'm going to help make it very clear this is your to be moving on to the next place. So Jacob is getting this with Laban. He is to move back. The favor is gone. The backbiting has begun. And there is stuff set in motion that it's like, if he does not get out, there will be trouble. And there is not enough money in the world, guys, that can replace the favor of God in your life, that can replace that when you know that you're in the center of God's will. You don't want anything that the world or the enemy could come along and try to pull you away. It's like, no, you can keep that. I want to be where God has me be. I want to go where God has me go. The joy and peace that comes from being in the place that God would have you is unmatched. So Jacob does the smart thing. He goes and he talks to his wives about it. Verse 4. And think about this. Jacob could have just gone in. It could have been like, all right, pack it up, ladies. We're out of here. If he had done that with this contention that has been in his household, that probably wouldn't have gone very well. But instead, he comes to them and he lays out the whole thing, and then he's like, what do you think? Very, very smart. So verse 4. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. And he said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. God is saying, I'm setting it up. I have set up this transition for you. I have set up the means, the wealth. I have set up everything you need to make this happen. In verse 11, there is a capital A in your Bibles for angel there. He's going to call himself God in verse 13, which is not something lowercase angels do. This is Jesus. He takes the credit for blessing Jacob, pointing to the flocks Jacob now has and saying, I made them be what they needed to be. And he says he's done this because he's seen how Laban is treating him. The next verse is then very interesting. Jesus does a callback. He says, I am the God of Bethel. Bethel meaning God's house. What is a house? Guys, I can tell you, having just been gone for a couple of days at a wedding, those of you who got back from camp, you know what I'm talking about. When you were away for a time and you come back home and you step into your house, there's like an instant release, like tension leaves your body, and you still might have stuff to do, but there's this like, I'm home. This is where my couch is. This is where my bed is. I know all the quirks, all the things, and it might not be perfect, but it's mine, and it's where I can fully be me. It is that safe place. The place that protects you from the elements, the place that you can relax and be your disgusting self sometimes. It is funny how this evening, we've already got it planned after being gone for a couple of days and working very hard on this wedding. We're all just going to change into our disgusting clothes, and we're just going to hang out, and we're just going to be together. It's that thing that it's like, if anybody, you know what I mean? When you're in that place where you're like, I am at peak relaxed capacity. And I say this with all love, knowing that I've either done this to someone else or they've done it to me. When you're in that capacity and then you hear that knock at the door, what is that thing that comes to your mind where you're like, who is invading this time where I look disgusting? And okay, hold on, give me 1 second, like that kind of thing. But that is the house. That is your house. That is your safe place. That is the place that you come home to, and you're like, yes. I made a vow to Tracy 27 years ago. And she has followed me from place to place, from apartment to apartment, from house to house. We had a 5-year block of time where we moved once a year, every year. And I can tell you it was not fun. But we found that ultimately, some of those apartments and houses were much better or worse than others. But what didn't matter was the walls, was the structure. What mattered was the vow that we made. My home is wherever Tracy is. That's where home is. And Tracy, wherever Tracy is, God will be our foundation. He will be the bedrock of our life. He brought us together. And in his timing, he told her to leave Tulsa with me. And because we always want to abide in Bethel, we went. And Jacob gets reminded of this vow here by God. You said you'd come back. You said you'd come back to God's house. That is where the blessing is now. That is where the favor resides. It's not here with Laban. It's not here with your fleshly wants, hopes, desires, dreams, ambitions. It's back where you made the vow. It's back where you said, if I got you back there safely, you said you'd be mine. It would stop being God, your God, and become God, my God. So Jacob says all this to Rachel and Leah. In verse 14, we see their response. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what he has paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our fathers belongs to us and our children. It belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. You understand what a miracle this is, right? Rachel and Leah, who have been in contention, like this huge competition with children. Like it seems like they would agree on nothing, but on this, they agree. What are they agreeing on? Let's pack up and move to a foreign land. That takes God to do something like that. They understood that they were pawns in Laban's game here, and yeah, they're willing to move on no matter what it takes. So do you see how Jacob's household has struggled for peace in this land, in Haran? But suddenly, when they see purpose in moving towards Bethel, in going towards God's house, they are suddenly in one accord. Even though it's a scary move, they are of one mind. That's God. Boy, guys, you give a church vision and purpose. You tell them to love God, love people, make disciples. You tell them to love when it's hard. You tell them to serve. You just take everything that's in the Bible, all the commands of Jesus, and you say, do this. Get in the Word. Make this happen. And you get in one accord about that. Watch. Watch as you have peace in a body as everybody moves forward. Guys, if there's one thing that's amazing in this church is there's peace, there's unity, there's people that are moving forward together. I got to see it firsthand over this past week. Everybody doing shalom in action, everybody working for the good of someone else, living sacrificially. Truly, truly incredible to watch, and such a blessing. You see that kind of attitude just rises above all contentious relationship. I love what's happening here in Jacob's household, that it is finding peace for the first time. We're not actually going to see any more backbiting with Rachel and Leah. We're going to see them moving forward in purpose. It's not all going to go perfect. In fact, in this chapter, we're going to see a problem. But we do see them moving forward together. So verse 17. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Paddan Aram, to give to his father Isaac, or to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. So why did Jacob flee from Laban? The Bible shows us two reasons. One, Laban tries to talk you into staying, doesn't he? Really well. I can tell you, God tells you to do something. Don't hang around people that will try to talk you out of it. The world will always try to talk you out of it, or at least try to get you to stay a little longer in your flesh. We had to sell our house in Tulsa right when the housing market crashed, and we were leaving behind success, and we had all these people asking us, what's in Iowa other than corn? What is in Iowa? What are you going back for? Do you realize it was embarrassing to say so often, we don't know. Well, what's your plan? We don't know. Where are you going? Well, we're going to start here and see where we end up. So you're not going up to pastor church? No. So you really have no idea. That is correct. It was. Everybody likes to hear, please give specifics. How is this going to work? And it's truly a step of faith when you're like, we're just going to trust God for the next step. Boy, if we've learned anything, that's what's God is looking for obedience like that. When he told Abraham to leave, he just said, you're going to be father of many nations. All mankind will be blessed through you. And then the next question is, okay, great. How exactly is that going to happen? God didn't lay out a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. He was just like, this is what's going to happen. And then Abraham trusted, and the most amazing thing happened, that faith was credited to him as righteousness. Do not be afraid to step out in faith. Do not let the world try to talk you out of it. If God puts something on your heart and you go to God, you go in prayer, you go to your spouse, you go to those people that you're walking with God in, and you pray, and there is accountability and there is confirmation, and step out. I had a mix of that. We had people who loved us, who knew us, that we had walked through the fire with. They knew our hearts, we knew their hearts, and we were very much like this church family with, where we're like, we're doing life together. We're serving with one another, we're loving one another. They came and they prayed, and they were like, yeah, there's not peace here anymore. You're called to leave. And they said it like, begrudgingly. It's like, we'll miss you, but we know this is right. We know this is God's will for you. There are people, these are people that saw our hearts, and they said, we don't understand either, but you need to do this, and we trust that you're following God. So that's reason one. The other reason Jacob would flee Laban, though, is because that favor is gone. Laban feels owed, even though he was the one who originally cheated Jacob by giving him Leah in marriage instead of Rachel. Laban feels owed, even though he was the one who talked Jacob into staying longer by saying, name your wages, and then he agreed to those terms. Laban feels slighted. He's coming for what's his, and Jacob's not having it. God said, this is what I love about this chapter more than anything else. God said, leave at once, and so they left at once. Let's see how Laban takes it. Verse 25. Verse 22. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Here's that favor I'm talking about. Laban pursued Jacob with the intent of bringing him back. You don't go so hard like this after a person, chasing them for 7 days, to be like, you didn't say bye. Well, bye. You don't do that. Laban went with the intent to bring back, or to take what he felt he was owed. One of the two things. But then God was very clear. Do not interfere with my plans, Laban. Verse 25. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him. And Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You've deceived me, which is a hilarious accusation. And you've carried off my daughters like captives in war, which they came willingly. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? Laban, ever the salesman here, twisting the narrative, being like, oh boy, you've done this the wrong way. I would have sent you off with the party. Instead, you're like a war criminal. This is terrible. You're a terrible person. The world will try to make you feel bad about being in the will of God all the time. Anything to slow you down, to stop you from moving forward in what God would have you do. Verse 28, you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you. But last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now that you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? Now that's a very interesting thing that just happened in those last two verses. Did you see? Remember, context is everything here. Why did Jacob come back to this land? marry someone to walk in covenant with. Because this is supposedly people. It has been people. Rebekah loved the Lord. This is where Rebekah's from. Laban is her uncle. They're God followers here, supposedly. And what did Laban just say? The God of your fathers. There's a disconnect now. God is not Lord over this home. Thankfully, Laban's going to listen to God because he's seen the favor that is on Jacob's life. And from that, he knows it's like, I shouldn't trifle with this. I should listen. And he says that. And he comes back around. Why did you steal my gods? Indicating Laban he has gone off the rails. He is worshiping false idols. Verse 31, Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period. So he searched but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He asked Laban. How have I wronged you that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. So Jacob feels very vindicated here. He's like, you've got nothing, right? Like, yeah, why did you? If that's your big beef, that I took your gods, that's why you're saying, it's like all that other stuff, you're like, I'll let it pass. But where are my gods? Well, they're not here, are they? And then he just goes off on a rant. Verse 30, we see all this stuff he has against Laban, pent up over all 20 years, kind of come out right here. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen day or night? This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Oh, that's cool. A big question remains here. Why did Rachel steal these idols? In short, we don't know. We do know that idols had taken root in Laban's family. Their hearts were no longer holy gods. And now Rachel has brought them with her. She stole them, and she brought something that God would not want coming back with them into the promised land. This is unwanted baggage that now comes with a curse. You'll remember in this covenant promise that Jacob now carries. God told Abraham, who you bless, I will bless. Who you curse, I will curse. Jacob spoke a curse and said, whoever has this will lose their life. Yeah, hard stuff. He spoke that in verse 32, and in just 4 chapters, we're going to see that curse carry out. When you stay where God's favor is, or go to where God's favor is going to be careful what baggage you take with you. A very wise professor at ORU said to me, the habits that you do not conquer while you are in college, the ones that go unchecked, you will struggle with those for the rest of your life. And boy, was he right. Boy, the habits we allow in our life to take root, if we do not discipline ourselves when we are young, these are the things that keep trying to follow us into the next phase. Doesn't mean they cannot be overcome, but they are overcome through the blood of the Lamb. They are overcome by completely surrendering to God through confession to one another so that we may be healed, which is an amazing thing. I've seen so much confession happening recently around me in these kids' lives and in the lives of others that I'm in a relationship with. And I'm seeing sin come out in the open and die. Sin likes to hide. It cannot thrive in the open. It cannot live in the open. Rachel hid. Rachel hid this sin. She stole. She stole idols. It's like a double whammy. It's not a thing that should be coming with them at all. And she took it and she hid it. And God's not going to let it come back. Be careful. Be careful what baggage you bring. If you have baggage, you need to be talking about that baggage, not hiding it, not lying about it. You need to be coming right to the people that you know and love and are walking with you and saying, I have this baggage, and then let us pray with you. Let us agree with you. Walk in accountability with one another so that that favor can remain in your life, so that peace can remain in your life. Have you noticed that when you're hiding sin, peace does not stay? It does not stay. But as soon as you bring sin out into the open to die, oh, suddenly you feel lighter. Even when there are consequences, you're like, I can at least live with myself now. Verse 43. Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Here, Laban is trying to lay claim on something that God has clearly said, nope, I've done this for you, Jacob. And Laban's trying to take it back. And Laban, he admits, yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Sadahutha. I don't know how to say that. It doesn't matter, because it means the same. Jacob called it Gilead. And it literally means this. Laban said, this heap is a witness. It literally means witness heap. Between you and me today. That is why it was called Gilead. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. Mizpah, by the way, is not a happy thing here. It is, if you cross this line with the intent to harm, may God smite you. It's that kind of thing. As we see, verse 50, if you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives beside my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. So please notice that you take that whole chapter, he got called. He went at once. He was in obedience to the will of God. And instantly we see conflict. We see Laban and a whole bunch of people coming after them, but it all came to naught because, again, Jacob was in the will of God. Know that that's going to happen probably every day of your life. You're purposing to be in the will of God. The enemy is going to try to put a stumbling block out there for you. Be that temptation, be that someone else telling you, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time going to church? Why are you serving God? Why are you being nice to people? Why are you loving people that are mean to you?" And it's like, well, because I want to live my life by what God says. And in doing so, I'm showing that I trust him. I'm showing that I choose him. I'm showing that if I love him, I am obeying his commands. And that's never going to make sense to the world, but you're going to see this favor and this peace. Even in the worst circumstance, you're going to see God's favor upon you until you're standing face to face with him. So this is the setup. Next week, we baptize 2, possibly 3 people. I'm very excited. Join us. If you're online, that will not be online, but we will be out there at Lake Iowa. We would love to have you there at 9 a.m. And I hope you read ahead into Genesis 32. Because without context, without all the buildup that we've seen, Genesis 32 doesn't make a lot of sense. But with this context, it is amazingly powerful stuff. I encourage you to join us in person if you can. It's also one that I'm like, invite someone for this one. It's Genesis 32. Invite someone to baptism. Maybe they're like, what is this about? Those are some of the best services to come to because, there's just an anointing on it, guys. So I say this to you from the bottom of God's heart. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face towards you and give you peace.